If you live in Washington, D.C., you'll hear more than your fair share of acronyms. FBI, DOJ, DOL, DEA, SEC. Most people work in one federal agency or another. One of your neighbors will work in this agency, another neighbor will work in that. And all these agencies seem to be called by their acronyms in casual conversation. The same goes for those agencies' rules and regulations. Today on Zippy Point. I'm Brock Romanek. I'm a big fan of you. When you work in a federal agency, it's not something you give much thought to, but when you come up with some new legal framework, something that's bound to be popular, and by popular, I mean used a lot, not necessarily well-liked. People are going to refer to it by either an acronym or some other shorthand reference. It's a logical thing for all of us to do. But even though we're all aware of it, when you're in the Gov and naming something like that, the official name, you don't give a second's thought to what it might possibly be called by the populace. I remember not really too long ago when the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board was born right after Sarbanes-Oxley, and people struggled with that. People initially started calling it peekaboo, but the folks that worked at the PCOB put a hard stop to that. They didn't like it. So we've all now become accustomed to just saying the PCOB, but trust me, at first it seemed like a mouthful. It was horrible to pronounce. Nobody liked it. Which brings me to the SEC's Division of Corporation Finance. CorpFin is its shorthand reference, and their spate of informal staff interpretations, written interpretations called the compliance and disclosure interpretations. It was born in 2007 when the staff took what was called the Telephone Interpretations Manual, more formally known as a Manual of Publicly Available Telephone Interpretation. I bet a lot of people that actually remember the Telephone Interpretations Manual, the phone interps, not remembering its official name. So in 2007, the CorpFin staff started to update sections of the telephone interps and renamed the whole thing as they did that, the Compliance and Disclosure Interpretations. 7 years later, in 2013, I ran a poll about what shorthand reference people were using for the new compliance and disclosure interpretation. And the results were that 60% use CDIs, 20% were still calling them the phone interps or staff interps, and 7 to 8% were calling them either C&Dis or CD&Is, 7 or 8% each. These last two really drive me crazy. It's such an awkward thing to say, C&Dis, CD&Is. Each is a real tongue twister, not pleasant to hear, too many syllables. I think phone interps now is truly dated, as not too many of the youngsters out there can harken back and recall that's what they were called. And perhaps staff interps is too general since there are 18 different sources of guidance for our area of law from the SEC. I have a separate Vid-Guide that explains all 18 of those sources. A link to that Vid-Guide is below. So I'm left with my personal favorite, CDIs, which I've consistently used since day one of their birth. Let me know what you think.